Theresa May there being turned into a laughing stock in Parliament. Now, over to a discussion tonight. In 2015, the heads of AU member states adopted a joint labour migration program for Africa as a strategic regional intervention to leverage migration for development. Yet African migrant workers continue to encounter harsh environments, sometimes fatal, while in search of livelihoods within the continent as well as to the EU and the Gulf Cooperation Council member states. Now, beginning tomorrow, the International Organization for Migration is hosting a symposium on fostering labour mobility within and from Africa. The symposium is the first official continental-level effort to implement the African Union Commission-led migration program. In studio to help us understand more about this is Frantz Celestin, is the Deputy Chief of Mission of International Organization for Migration IOM in Nigeria, also Senior Regional Program Manager. Good evening, Frantz, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Ibrahim. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, let's talk about this symposium that is supposed to start tomorrow in Nairobi. I mean, it has come at a better time because we've been talking about several challenges facing, migrant workers in Africa. There's xenophobic attacks. Of course, we know African workers were being mistreated, especially in the Middle East. I mean, is tomorrow's symposium meant to offer solutions to these kind of challenges?
Yes, of course. We take into account what the conditions of migrant workers. As you know, some of them face difficult conditions depending on their status, low wages, very difficult work environment, unsafe work environment. We wanted to bring all of the countries, all 55 member states of the African Union together to look for solutions to this issue, because migration is important, and migration has been part of us as a civilization for millennia. So the issue is not to prevent migration; it's to effectively regulate it. And if we do so, and it will benefit the migrant, the receiving country, and the sending country. And so.
Yes, Frantz, you're going to give us much more detail about tomorrow's symposium. But one of the other challenges that people mainly talk about, migrant workers talk about, and this is a challenge that they continue facing, especially, in their destination countries, away from their host countries. And this has everything to do with access, to their benefits. And apparently one of the challenges is that there's there's lack of compatibility between the social security sectors of different countries across Africa. Is this something that perhaps you're going to focus on tomorrow? Well,
this is very much something that we would look into, because portability of social security is one protection that we can provide that is necessary for migrant workers. The issue is, if you, as a person, were working in Tanzania for a number of years, and you were contributing to the social security system of Tanzania, what we would know is when it comes time for you to retire, what system is available for you to move what you've contributed to that system in Tanzania to Kenya. So you would need, the system would need to be talking to each other. So interoperability is very important for the portability of Social Security. So that's one thing, one of the items that we'll be discussing tomorrow, and it's very important, to us and also to the migrant workers.
Now, Frantz, I understand one of the top agenda also tomorrow is to establish some sort of a roadmap to promote the rights of African migrant workers. How best can that be achieved? And perhaps are you engaging, economic blocks in the country? Understand this, the East African Community, ECOWAS, the likes of SADC?
Well, the objective of, the whole symposium is underpinned by 3 very important continental documents. You mentioned one of them, the Joint Labour Migration Policy, and also the Revised Migration Policy Framework for Africa. And of course, they recently approved a free movement protocol, the African Union Free Movement Protocol. So those 3 documents were the impetus, the genesis for this symposium. And the symposium, our objective, first of all, is to increase coordination between and among the member states, the African Union member states, to effectively implement the free movement protocol. And the second part of it is to connect East and West Africa, so the EAC and ECOWAS, to design bilateral and multilateral labor and social security arrangement for the various member states in Africa, and as it relates to receiving countries outside of the continent.
Now, Frantz, I don't know if you've been following closely, reports coming out of Kenya, the latest from the SGR, that is the Standard Gauge Railway. This is one of the biggest infrastructure projects in Kenya. There are reports of mistreatment, harassment, very shocking reports coming out of this company. And these are Chinese meting out these injustices on Kenyan workers. I mean, how do you think we can best achieve when it comes to protection of African workers from foreigners especially?
Well, speaking in general, I'm not privy to the issue you mentioned, but speaking in general on the protection of workers, migrant workers specifically, we don't need to look at international instruments such as the International Convention on the Protection of Migrant Workers and members of their families. We can simply look at national laws. The enforcement of national laws is important. Enforcement of national labor laws and the national enforcement of national rights. Every single human being, by virtue of being a human, is entitled to the basic human rights. So looking at their basic human rights, providing protection, we can simply enforce the national laws.
As we conclude this conversation, Frantz, can you perhaps tell us in a nutshell what tomorrow's symposium is going to deliver for African migrant workers?
Well, it is the hope, as I said before, we're bringing all the 55 member states of the African Union together. We have from high official ministers and officials from ministries of foreign affairs relating specifically on how to design and craft bilateral agreements for their own labor migrant workers vis-a-vis other countries such as the European Union and the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And also, we also have officials from ministries of labor to look specifically at how we can provide more protection to migrant workers and those moving. But what the basic objective of this symposium is to harness, the energy. Africa has one of the youngest population and fat mobile population in the world. We need to harness the energy and the creativity of these young people for the development of the continent.
Thank you very much, Frantz, for your input. Frantz Celestin, there was the Deputy Chief of Mission of International Organization for Migration, well known as IOM, of course, in Nigeria, also Senior Regional Program Manager. Now, let me take you over